So, we are here and we will begin. This is Mauricio, and how do you say your last name? How do you pronounce your last name?
Well, in Brazil they pronounce Szabo, but I believe it's Szabo, the right
Szabo.
pronunciation.
Mauricio
Szabo.
Szabo, who
Yes.
is I would say a good friend now, a good friend, good
Yeah.
acquaintance of mine. And he is going to tell us about some of the tooling that he's written. So we're gonna find out a little bit about REPLs. We're just gonna have a good time and have a good conversation where hopefully we can all learn a little bit.
Yeah, nice.
All right, Mauricio. So first, just get a little personal. So you were in Brazil and now you're in Uruguay. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, this was a great experience. Like, I was living in Brazil till September the last year,
Mhm.
and we already had all the documentation to live in Uruguay because we wanted to leave Brazil for a while. And when it came the time, the pandemic happened. So airports closed, and then our daughter was born in Brazil.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, what happened right now? But okay, but everything went fine in the end. We only delayed our travel by a single month, and now we're here. And it has been a great experience, like learning Spanish and trying to figure out how things work. This
Mhm.
is quite a bit of an adventure, especially when you have a daughter, because
Mhm.
well, now all the I don't know medical moments are all in Spanish, and we don't yet dominate the language. So this is like incredible.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
well, so far everything is fine here. People started vaccination on the beginning of this month, so
Mhm.
we are now on the waiting list already.
Mhm.
So everything is going smoothly so far.
Yeah, and your daughter is she's about one, is that right?
No, 9 months right now.
9 months. Okay, all right. Yeah, 9 months is not one.
No, no, it's when you have a baby, you learn to count every month because
Mhm.
she sleeps and she wakes up another baby altogether. Like she does other things, she starts to talk more or talk less
Uh-huh.
or scream or she's calm. So every day it's a little bit different.
Every day it's a new experience. Well, that's the
Yeah,
joys of parenthood. It's good
yeah,
that
exactly.
you're able to enjoy that. So switching gears a little bit, I have seen a lot of your different talks you've given at different conferences. I think that was the first time I met you was your talk at Reclosure. I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite conference that you've attended, that you've seen online, that you've spoken at?
Well, I believe the best conference ever that I ever went was on Heart of Clojure in Belgium.
Oh, what was your
So
favorite thing about it?
I don't know. Something about the experience, the energy. I don't. It was also my first conference outside Brazil,
Uh-huh.
but I don't know if that was the case. I think that every step of the conference was thinking about people. Like
Uh-huh.
we are gonna start the conference a day earlier, a
Uh-huh.
day before the starting of the conference. We will show you around, and on the days of the conference, we will have like coffee breaks where everyone will meet each other. There's no like, it's a single segment
Mm-hmm.
conference, so everyone have to talk about the same subject all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was incredible, and also they had like this very I don't know very peculiar place where they it was like an old house with lots of spaces for you to talk and
Mm-hmm.
oh, it was incredible. I don't know how to. It's
How
something like
large
you
was
had
it?
to be there.
Yeah, how
What?
many people? How large was it? How many people were there?
Oh, I don't really remember, but it wasn't that big,
It wasn't that
honestly.
big. Yeah, I like the smaller. I know music festivals and tech conferences aren't exactly the same thing, but I like smaller music festivals because it's much more intimate. By the end of the weekend, it's just like, oh hey, even if you don't know everybody, and it's
Yeah,
really good.
exactly. Yeah, in this case, there. there were also something like musical about it because one of the talks was about making clojure, making music with clojure. And
Mhm,
there was a little bit of a show off in the end, like, oh, let's show how to make a music and how to make animations.
mhm.
Oh, it was incredible.
They two things. They say that I think I hope I'm not wrong about this. They say that Rich Hickey, his first major was music, and that's just a random closure fact I've heard. I don't know if it's true,
I
um,
don't know either.
but I do think that there is a huge music and programming have more in similarity than I think most people give them credit for.
Yeah.
So moving on to some more tech stuff. So being clojurians, most of us use a REPL. Well, I hope you use a REPL if you're a clojurian, because if not, why? Um,
Yeah.
but I've realized as much as I use a REPL, and I know what it stands for, it's the read eval print loop. But what really is a REPL? What are these tools that we take for granted all the time? Um, you have built some really incredible tools associated with the Atom IDE. Can you start by telling us a little bit about chlorine and even, if you wouldn't mind, Clover as the VS Code,
Yes,
correct?
exactly.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so I started the project to try to simulate the experience that I had on my table.
Mm-hmm,
And chlorine wasn't my first project in this matter. Like
mm-hmm,
there was already a project called ProtoREPL that used NREPL at the time,
mm-hmm,
but I really wanted something that would support clojure better. And at the time, NREPL was not really that good with clojure. To
mm-hmm,
be honest, clojure was not that good. Like we had like Figwell and Figwell main, it's way better than Figwell, but Shadow CLJS didn't exist at the time, so
ooh,
it was like an incredible. Here be monsters. Like you will have to to hunt bugs and see what happened.
the before
So,
times.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So this that project that I called Clojure Plus made I saw problems like converting from the Clojure word to the JavaScript word, and then when I learned about Shadow CLJS, I thought, oh, maybe it's time to target CLJS as a first class language. Like everything is written in CLJS, the plugin, the in this case of the VS Code, there are two specific parts of the plugin. One is the web view, and the other is the one that runs in the VS Code, and both are ClojureScript. So
Mhm,
it's been quite a wild experience, but that's where things start to become complicated because I decided to target the not any REPL, decided to target the socket REPL, the newest edition on Clojure, I believe 1.9.
mhm,
And that was really hard to target because there are few to no toolings targeting this. So in the beginning and still today, I used another kind of REPL that's called unREPL. It's with UNREPL,
mhm,
and it works, but it's hard to get it right. And chlorine does it right like 99% of the time, but there are 1% of the time that this does not work. So I am still trying to refactor things and so on. But the experience that I wanted in chlorine was okay, so I am in ClojureScript, let's say,
mhm,
and I am working, and I don't realize that I am in ClojureScript.
mhm,
And once I was working in, I believe it's a Hubot project, is a Slack bot,
mhm,
and I tried out complete go-to-var definition and other things, and everything was working. And then I tried to evaluate something that only works in Clojure, and it didn't work. And
mhm,
I was like, oh my gosh, I am in ClojureScript. So
mhm.
when I got that experience, I thought, okay, it's time to publish this.
Yeah.
And so that's how things were progressing, and now they are way better than they were at the time. And the idea of this project, I know that I also talked a little bit about this in another talk. That's the blend, the idea of the REPL. Like the REPL is inside your editor, And if possible, you don't even realize you have a REPL. Like you go to bar definition, it will use the REPL. You save something, and it will automatically update your code. This works better in ClojureScript, by the way.
Mm,
The Clojure side, it's not that simple because the JVM sometimes gets in the way.
mhm,
But things like, for example, you evaluate a test and if it fails, it will give you a stack trace, like you can click and go to
mhm,
the error. And also work without dependencies, like no any REPL, for example. You
mhm,
just fire up a Clojure REPL, and if you like forgot to add something, it will work.
mhm,
And
mhm.
so you can start to work right now. That was the original idea, and it still is right today.
It sounds like the beauty of extensibility is kind of sounds like is the dream, being able to kind of separate yourselves from all those different REPLs. And speaking of different REPLs, so you've mentioned some. There's NREPL, and that's typically that's the CIDR uses NREPL, and then there's socket REPL, yeah, and
Yes,
there's unREPL, which you've mentioned. There's Figwheel, yeah.
yes.
Help me out here. I'm getting to the end of the ones that I can name. Piggyback.
Piggyback, it's the one that Figma uses to transform a Clojure REPL into a ClojureScript REPL. So Figma and Piggyback are almost the same.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Um, now there was one that you mentioned that isn't on this list. Did I miss one?
Yeah, there's the shadow remote
The
API.
shadow remote REPL. And so, and
It's,
my understanding is that Chlorine, you're able to switch in and out of these REPLs. Is that right? You're able to pick which one, and it's very easy to just.
yeah, when you are connected to a REPL, it will stay connected to that REPL. There's
Mhm,
no change in that.
mhm,
But when you are connecting a Clojure REPL and then connects into a ClojureScript REPL, you can switch between them easily. So if you are evaluating a Clojure project, a Clojure file, not a
mhm,
project, it will evaluate on the Clojure REPL.
mhm,
If you evaluate on the ClojureScript file, on the
mhm,
clojure REPL, and also, and that's the beauty of it, when you are evaluating a CLJC file,
mhm,
it will ask you with the config file and configuration which REPL you want. So you
mhm,
can all the time evaluate CLJC in Clojure or
mhm.
in ClojureScript. So depends on what you want.
So speaking of which, I guess that brings us to kind of the difference between Clojure REPLs and ClojureScript REPLs. Do you have? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so ClojureScript REPLs are quite complicated, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah, like everything Clojure. Welcome to ClojureScript.
Yes. So the problem with the ClojureScript REPL is that there is no ClojureScript REPL. Like
Hmm.
you are running JavaScript, for example, in the browser,
Hmm.
and the browser can't open a socket or a port in your machine. It will only connect to something. So you have to connect to a REPL that's open outside the JavaScript environment.
Hmm.
And if you don't have a JavaScript environment, which one we will have is probably a Clojure environment because the ClojureScript compiler is written in Clojure.
Hmm.
So you open up a REPL that's a Clojure REPL specifically, and then by some command you are able to send a form into this REPL and then push it to the JavaScript,
Hmm.
evaluate there, get the result, get it back to the REPL, and send you back to
Hmm.
the user. So that's where things become quite complicated with chlorine, for example, because there are multiple ways of this how these REPLs work.
Hmm.
So in this case of Figwheel, that chlorine unfortunately still does not support, you have to use piggyback.
Hmm.
So you evaluate a command and you transform that REPL that you are connected into a ClojureScript REPL, and then you can evaluate ClojureScript. And in this case, the case of the Shadow Remote API, it's a WebSocket API that you can evaluate REPL code there
Hmm.
from Clojure, from ClojureScript to multiple targets, multiple whatever. And so when it's available and there's a config file to config toggle to
Hmm.
use it,
Mhm.
I will use the Shadow Remote API because
Mhm.
it also can push you back information. Like you
Mhm.
mistyped something, you save the file, the Shadow will fail to compile, and then that information, Shadow failed to compile, will be sent back to me. So I can react on the editor. So
Mhm.
that's why I prefer to use. In fact, the Shadow CLJS API is so good that I wanted to use it for clojure itself.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because there are things like when you evaluate a REPL, you just eval something and then print a result.
Mhm.
And this result not always is readable. For example, you can evaluate a perfectly valid clojure code that will render
Mhm.
invalid hidden.
Mhm.
And the Shadow CLJS does not allow that. So
Mhm.
when you evaluate something that returns invalid hidden, it
Mhm.
will convert it to, I believe it's transit, the format.
Mhm.
And so you can like just get the information and that's it.
Mhm.
Also, it has first class support for datafy and nav, so you can evaluate infinite sequences even in clojure and the REPL will not blow up. So this is incredible.
That is incredible. Wow. So I am full up on knowledge. I'm looking down at my things like, what questions else do I have that you have been so thorough in filling in any questions I could have had. You kind of beat me to it.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
so
So,
what were we gonna say?
yeah, I would just say that if you want, there's also another kind of CLJS REPL. There's Lumo and Blank.
Wait, say that again?
Lumo and Blank are two ClojureScript implementations that use purely JavaScript to implement everything.
Huh.
So
And how do they
they,
differ?
yeah, they compile everything in JavaScript.
Mhm.
So they bundle also with a version of Google Closure compiler that runs on JavaScript.
Mhm.
It does not support, I believe, the advanced compilation, but I believe
Mhm.
whitespace works.
Mhm.
So in this case, there's no Clojure REPL.
Mhm.
There's just the ClojureScript REPL. It's way easier.
Wow.
Yeah, it's way easier to interop with that. But also, um, there's little to no tooling to work with them, unfortunately, because I did want to think like better ways to explore
Mhm.
these other implementations.
Mhm.
Because I believe a huge step for ClojureScript is this idea that you have to have a JVM running, and then you will run a compiler that's in Java, and
Mhm.
sometimes you write macros, and you have Java objects in the middle of the macros, and
Mhm. It's
this
just
is strange.
a lot going on. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So Lumo doesn't have any of this. You can write macros in ClojureScript, and they will run, and everything will be fine.
Mhm.
So almost there's still some juggling because the clojure macros run not on the expansion. There's expansion time and runtime,
Mhm.
and Lumo also does this two steps. So you can't use like one macro when you are evaluating code. There's a little bit of confusion there. But it works way better than, for example, Clojure script in the JVM when you have to write your macros in the CLJ files.
Yeah.
So they also are supported by Chlorine.
Okay, awesome. And will you get me a link after this so I can post that below in the description?
Right.
Um, so that actually brings me to so you've been working on this for years now.
Yeah,
What do you
5 years.
think is the most, I guess, interesting or valuable or thing you've learned through this entire journey? What, I guess, piece of information are you most grateful to have learned on this journey?
Okay, so there are lots of information that I learned.
Well, what you
One thing
just
that,
said was super valuable, which is what made me think of that question.
yeah, for example, lots of things that I learned about how Clojure works
Mhm.
was because of these
Mhm.
implementations of REPLs.
Mhm.
Like there are lots of different things that can fail and that can, I don't know, work, but not really when you are working with this idea of, okay, I have a repo and I want to evaluate code, but I can't evaluate too much and change the namespace because otherwise I will break the running code.
Mhm, mhm,
So it's, I believe the internals of Clojure, how they work, were the most valuable information that I had.
mhm,
Like when I was trying to understand and piece all these things together,
mhm,
I thought, oh, this is too much. I wouldn't be able to do that. For example, with the unREPL code, it was quite unreadable for me in the beginning.
mhm.
And now I'm almost like, oh, okay, this does this does that, and so on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So sometimes when I am working and a friend of mine asks, okay, so what exactly happens when you do def? I oh, so it creates a var and then gets it, the reader first reads everything and then finds the def and then it just puts it into the namespace and after that we'll pass again
Uh-huh.
and fill the blanks. And I was like, oh, I only
Like
know
script.
that because because of this all these ideas, all these
Mhm,
implementations, and so on.
mhm,
So
mhm,
I learned a lot about how editors work, how I could make it even better, or how, for example, also something like about, oh, I was thinking that VS Code would be easier and it's not, and how the licenses of these editors work. For
mhm.
example, the Atom editor at the beginning I thought, oh, VS Code is a better Atom, and then oh no, it's completely separated product.
Uh-huh.
And so it made me learn more, not only about Clojure, but also about the community around everything. Because
Yeah.
why someone like uses Cider and is not using, for example, Chlorine?
Mhm,
I had to learn about these things also because otherwise I would not be able to make a product better.
mhm, mhm,
For example, why someone use VS Code?
mhm,
VS Code, for example, does not support all the features that I have on Chlorine right now. So how
mhm,
can I make them be supported?
mhm,
And then when I was like figuring out all these things and so on, lots of people came to me like, oh, so you are doing a job that I believe we also need help. So
mhm,
can we join forces?
mhm,
So there's this huge community of tooling authors and so on that we are able to help each other all the time.
mhm.
And so it was in the beginning just an experiment to see if I could make my table better. I like table in Atom, and
Uh-huh.
then it became something way more like how the Clojure internals work,
Mhm.
and then way more like how community works, like how the Clojure community works, and
Yeah. Yeah.
what can we do to help each other better. And
And you do have a channel on Slack, a chlorine channel.
yeah, chlorine/clover,
Mhm,
chlorine-clover is
mhm.
the channel.
And I know that you are available there if anybody ever has any questions or wants to try it. You're very responsive in general to people.
Yeah,
Um,
just for the notice, I am on a different time zone for most of people, so
uh,
sometimes
well, it would.
it's something interesting because sometimes there was a time I was helping someone and he was also helping me, and we were like, I believe 12 hours of distance between.
Yeah, yeah,
There was it was incredible. Like I was in
yeah. Uh-huh,
the just after lunch. Okay, so I just figured out this thing.
uh-huh,
Oh, he's sleeping because it's
uh-huh, uh-huh.
2 a.m.
Mhm. Well, it's funny for at least East Coast US, you are surprisingly close because I do have some friends in like, like Israel or India is like that where I just have to really be, oh gosh, it's the middle afternoon for me, but it's yeah, 3 o'clock in the morning, really be cognizant of that. But at least East Coast and Uruguay, we're within a few hours. We've talked about this,
Yeah, I think it's 4 or 3 hours. I don't know.
something like that. Oh, I have one more fun thing I want to ask you because it blows my mind how many languages you know, both
Ah,
just programming languages and I was saying normal languages. Could you?
human
Just
language.
Mauricio, fun fact, share your languages with us because, like I said, it just blows me away every time.
Okay, so programming languages. I began to work with QBasic and then
Okay.
Visual Basic, Delphi, and C and C++.
Okay.
Let me
I'll count
see.
those.
So PHP, ASP, C Sharp, Java, Ruby, Python, a little bit of Perl, but not much, and a little bit of Smalltalk, and Scala, Clojure, and a little bit of Haskell.
So closure, closure script, Haskell. Okay. Yeah, that
Oh,
is.
Elixir. Elixir is also
Oh,
on
an
the list.
Elixir. Okay, so that
Elixir.
is. I have 17 programming languages from that count, and then just because you speak Brazilian and now Spanish and clearly English. There was another one that was kind of random though. What was it?
Yeah, it's a little bit of Japanese.
Little bit of Japanese. Okay, is that from do you enjoy like like anime or anything or what why
Yeah,
Japanese?
I enjoy anime and a little bit of manga. And at some time in the past, I was with a group of friends, and one of them studied Japanese. And I was like, oh, I want to study it too.
Mm-hmm,
So then I learned a little bit, and I also went to Japan once
mm-hmm.
from traveling.
Wow. And in German
And
too. Don't you know German or Russian? One of those.
no, no, not
No.
really.
All
I
right.
mean,
What you need though.
when I went to Heart of Clojure, I only knew English, so there were times when I was, oh my gosh, how can I make myself be understood right now?
Uh-huh. Do you have your
Because
little translator?
there's a social factor. Like for example, when I went to Belgium to Heart of Clojure,
Mm-hmm.
I also thought, oh, it's like 9 hours. No, sorry, 19 hours of travel by plane.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't want to go to the conference and then go back because
No.
almost 2 days traveling. So I
Yeah.
rent a motorcycle in
Oh.
Belgium, in fact in Netherlands, and made a little road trip.
Yeah.
So and this was like an incredible experience. Like I went to Belgium and I was like, okay, so now I have to somehow go to Netherlands to get
Uh-huh.
the bike and,
Yeah.
and drive back to the
Uh-huh.
conference.
Uh-huh. And were
All
you
this,
solo? Did you go alone?
yeah, alone.
Oh, wow. So you're
Uh,
alone for that too.
yeah, so this was like, oh, I have to make myself understood with English
Uh-huh.
only because I don't know any other language.
Uh-huh.
At the end of the travel, I believe I was like fishing some information in Germany or something in German because oh, almost I believe it was 2 weeks traveling. So you start to understand a little bit of one thing and another, but
Mhm.
then I went back to Brazil and forgot everything.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens with languages. Well, let's hope that this is not the same with programming languages. I mean, when's the last time like you almost forgot that you even know Perl? When's the last time you did Perl?
Yeah, Perl is like write once, right? You write once and you never understand.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that it is about time for us to end our awesome conversation. I want to keep this a good that blessed under 30 minutes that YouTube viewers apparently like. I mean, nobody ever makes it to the end. Just I see the stats of these videos. It's remarkable. Do you have any closing words for us? Anything else that you'd like to say to the community or say to me, or just this was a really great interview, and I think we're all hopefully a lot more educated on the different types of REPLs.
Oh, only one thing is like if you are using some tool and you're not like liking it or you see some limitations,
Mm-hmm.
try chlorine, try clover,
Yes.
and tell me what are the troubles that you are having because this is something really hard for tooling authors.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I don't do any kind of telemetry in any of my tools, and it's quite hard to understand why people stop using or start using the tooling that
Yes.
I'm making.
Yes.
So if I do know these feedbacks, I can make it better. I can
Mhm,
like make better code and so on.
mhm, mhm,
And there are nowadays lots of people that say, "Oh, I would love to have an editor in ClojureScript, for example."
mhm,
And the truth is that we do not. We do not want an editor with ClojureScript. We want an editor that works well for us, and that's it.
mhm,
So, for example, for me, Atom works really well,
mhm,
even being kind of like a second place in the Microsoft world, because
mhm,
right now it's GitHub and GitHub is Microsoft.
mhm,
But I do like it, and so I'll keep using that.
mhm,
So, if people were just as passionate in this with their editors like they are, for example, with Emacs that have an incredible community where people like debug Emacs and see the pain points and try
mhm.
to fix them. If we had that on other projects, I believe we would have like the greatest tools that we could imagine. So that's like my closing thoughts. Try
Yeah,
something
yeah.
new and try to make it better.
Yeah, yeah. The IDE wars we get into so often just seems so silly because it should be the best tool for the job, right? And here you are saying, hey, y'all, I made this really wonderful tool for the job and I'd like to add to it anything you'd like. Here it is. I will post a
I,
link below where everybody can try it out and use it and give that feedback.
yeah, right. Thanks. And this happens in an old job of mine. Like we were working one with Emacs, another with I believe was Cursive, and I with at the time Chlorine didn't exist, so I was using ProtoRep on my other project.
Mhm,
And we were like, oh, so I can debug this with the cursive REPL, and I can debug this with my other tools. So we
mhm,
had like 3 to 4 different insights on over the same problem. It was a great experience. So
mhm.
we need more of that instead of like IDE wars.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, personally, I have all of the relevant IDEs installed. I use Emacs and IntelliJ and Atom and Chlorine and VS Code. Well, VS Code has kind of fallen out of favor, if I'm being completely honest, but don't tell anybody. Um,
All right.
it's the best tool for the job. All right. On that end, I guess, on that note, I guess we will end this gracefully. Um, it was
Thanks.
really great talking to you, Mauricio. Thank you so much. And I encourage everyone to try out chlorine, try out Atom, leave your judgments behind, and get involved and help to. And if you want to help build something great, just reach out to Mauricio here.
Okay, thanks a lot for calling me, and see you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.